Today we begin to enter the home stretch of Season 3 here in our draft-only franchise on NBA 2K24. And we ended last episode at the All-Star break. And since then, this team has actually done a fair amount of winning. We've gone 6-3 here post All-Star break thus far, which, considering, we're 24-38 on the year, that is pretty impressive. Going through the box scores of these wins, our first one, AC Stevens, would lead the way in scoring in a double-double effort for him. Lowry poured in 19 behind him, 5 players in double figures. The very next night, we'd pick up another win against the Bulls. This time, J.R. Holloway actually scored for Chicago. Lowry would lead us this time with 21 and 5 players in double figures once more. We'd pick up a win against the Raptors, 41 for Lowry on 25 shots. AC Stevens, I'll say, also dropped in 21. I will say that Andre Stevens got injured, and so for a couple games, you're going to see Draymond Green play. I think he was out for 2 games, though. 30 points led the way in this victory from Sidney Lowry once again on a bit of a hot streak here. Against the Celtics, I believe this is when Andre Stevens would come back. Yep, he didn't score double-digit points, but Lowry with another 30-point game led us in this effort. And then our last win would be against the Jazz in yet another 30-point game for Lowry. Just looking at his recent games, 30 plus points in 5 out of his last 6 games, including a 40-pointer as well. He's definitely on a hot streak right now. And hopefully that can continue against the Clippers, who, of course, I've mentioned it pretty much every episode this season. We have their first round pick. Quick standings check, as this run is likely to drop us a bit in terms of lottery odds. We are down to 7th. I think we were 4th to begin the episode. We're down to 7th in lottery odds, but the Clippers rose from 3rd place up into 2nd. I think the Sixers got Joel Embiid back, so they're likely to maybe rise up the ranks a little bit as the year goes by. But the season ended today, we'd have the number 2 odds and the number 7 odds. Pretty good spot, but we do not want to hand the Clippers a win, because that would get them that much closer to Philly. So let's hop in and try to get a win against the Los Angeles Clippers. But before we do that, I'll just quickly go back to our previous meeting. We did beat them by 25 very early in the season behind a double-double from Lowry and from AC Stevens. Andre Stevens was also really good in this game, 21 on 11 shots. He's been kind of a little bit cold since his return from injury, so hopefully this game against the Clippers can get him back on track. And now let's hop into this Clippers game. A couple teams here at the bottom of their respective conferences. And of course, as I've stated many times, the 2 teams for whom we have the first round picks for this upcoming season. And we see Sidney Lowry opening the game, getting blocked by Porter Jr. Porter Jr. probably one of the few matchups in the league that actually has a length advantage on Lowry, but as you can probably notice by the length of this episode, we're gonna be watching a little bit more of this game today, about once a season, maybe not every season, but I like to just have one game where you can watch the entire thing. I understand not everybody cares as much about a single game here in March to watch a full game, but I know some of you do, and so we're gonna watch the full game today as Lowry gets blocked for the 2nd time already. My goodness. But having an episode like this about once a year just gives me a chance to kind of just talk about the series in general and provide more overarching commentary rather than just kind of what's happening in front of us in the game. Also allows you to see some of the things that get edited out, see kind of how plays are working in the playbook, how many people are getting how many touches, et cetera, that you don't really get in the cut up clips. And so just gives me a chance to kind of talk about the team. Now we'll be doing our full stats and awards episodes where we'll give out the surprise and disappointments of the year. Everything like that will be next episode. And so we're gonna have two episodes in a row where we're talking about these players, but I think it's still good, even though with that episode coming up next time, to watch this full game as Stevens misses free throw there, and Irvin Edwards, somebody I liked in last draft class, gets the transition bucket. There were quite a few comments on the last episode, which I thoroughly appreciate, and I kind of wanted to talk about those comments here in this first quarter. We almost got the alley-oop there. And one of them was just kind of about the core of this team and who should be viewed as kind of the people that we're building around. And obviously Sidney Lowry, who just slams home a ridiculous dunk here. I mean, right when we start to talk about him, he shows us why. What a star player. Has been so much improved this year over last, and is one of the big reasons we've gone from worst team in league history to at least a solid NBA team who's not even in one of the worst 5 records in basketball this season. But obviously Sidney Lowry is the main center stone of this rebuild. Nobody on this team currently has his ceiling, nor is anybody as good as he is this season. So everything that we do, ultimately, despite the fact that we're going to have multiple guys that we're building around, that guy's one of them we'll talk about in a couple minutes, because that was a beautiful pass full court. Everything that we do revolves around him, And what I really like about Lowry is, he's technically a 2 guard. We've been playing him at the 3 for each of his first 2 seasons. That positional versatility. I don't think building around him, you don't need specific skill sets around him, honestly. I think he can do a little bit of everything. I will say he has like A's and A pluses in his, his playmaking for his dribbling and his passing. I think getting somebody else that can maybe handle some of that load could be good, because despite the fact that he has those A's and A pluses there, it's just seems like he's not that great. His assist to turnover ratio is actually not very good. You could say part of that is, the team around him. Maybe he'd get more assists if his teammates were making more shots, which is certainly true. I think we need to get better players around him, which we'll be doing come the off season. But just also, he just seems, for a guy that has, A plus handling, can't remember what his exact rating is, but he has a really good handle rating. He just doesn't actually get by people very consistently, like with dribble moves. Like if he gets off a pick, he can get by somebody, but just I accidentally pressed my pause button here as we're recording this. Somebody, I don't know if he quite has, lead ball handler here. You see he's kind of having some struggles here, but that was mostly due to the double team that he got briefly. But I think we need somebody else that can be kind of the main ball handler. I don't think he can do it all on his own. He's not a point guard, you know what I mean? So I think that's maybe a skill set we're missing to maybe get the most out of Lowry. I think he certainly can score, off the dribble very well, but I think his best looks are off the catch, and I want to get him more off the catch looks in future seasons because he's so lethal in those areas. And I think just having somebody else over Wilson Fisher, as much as Wilson Fisher kind of is very good at what he does on the defensive end, You definitely want an upgrade over that. And as we previewed last episode, and we'll do another preview once the season ends, this next class gives us a lot of potential at that point guard spot. After him, I think you gotta consider Andre Stevens a core player as well. You know, he had his best game of the season in that second episode, and here we go. You talk about the player, and they come up with a massive play. Awesome block on the perimeter for Stevens there. You know, he doesn't have quite the ceiling for sure. I don't know if he's honestly ever going to be somebody that's racking up, you know, all-star appearances or anything like that. But great positional size, ability to score, that like we just see there, make some plays on defense. I feel like he's a guy that has even played above his rating this year. He has kind of all B's and B minuses and C pluses kind of across the board is kind of his thing, but I feel like he's really solid. He peaked really early in the season. He hasn't quite had a game as good as that since. He's had very good games, but not one where he was kind of, you know, toe-to-toe with Lowry as the best player, which is fine. He's also in his rookie year. He has plenty of time to improve as well. But that was the thing coming out of the draft, right? We sacrificed a bit of upside to take what Andre Stevens could do early on. So we know he's not going to probably be good enough to be the second best player on a contending team, but he can certainly still be considered our core. And then kind of the last player, I only consider us to really have three core players, and this last one's honestly even debatable, is Christian Davidson, who we've been given minutes, of course, at the backup point guard slot this year, just because our point guard situation is pretty dang bad. With Hudson just not being quite an NBA level player, and that being the backup point guard we were planning to have. I think long term he could play point guard. He's shown me some good stuff in terms of decision making at the point guard spots. I don't know if he exactly has the tendencies I love for the point guard spot, but either way, whether he's, you know, a point guard or a two guard down the line, he's certainly somebody that has the upside to be a core player. Of course, starting out at 70 overall with 0 badges, he has a long way to go, but we're definitely very committed to the development of Christian Davidson on this team, because he has that A+ potential. He actually has a higher potential than even Sidney Lowry, whose potential sits at A. Every offseason, 2K can change someone's potential, so we'll have to see if it stays at A+ or if it goes down at all come the off season. But as of right now, we're operating under the assumption that this is an A+ potential guy that obviously needs a lot of development, but we got him in the mentorship program to hopefully improve his badge situation, and we're hoping he can go up. I don't know, can we get lucky and get like a +5 overall this off season, something like that? And he can be a much bigger asset for us next year. And he has, with all that room to grow, he has a ton of ways you can develop him. If we want to develop him as a point guard, we can focus a lot on his playmaking. If we want to develop him more as a two guard long term, we can kind of go more 3 and D. We could develop him as a slasher. His ratings are really all solid, but none of them are great, so it kind of just depends on how you focus train him, I think, as to who he'll turn out to be. We are focused on his outside scoring right now. I feel like this team definitely needs more shooting. So hopefully he gets a big boost to his shooting from this year to next, and that he keeps that potential, because there is the risk that, you know, maybe not even next season, maybe a couple years down the road, that his potential just all of a sudden drops off a cliff. So we got to keep that in mind. As much as I view him as a core player now, we can't really operate under the assumption that he's, you know, a surefire future all-star top 3 option. That's kind of what we're hoping to be, rather than maybe counting on it. And with that being said, still doing everything in our power to give him the minutes, to give him the role that will help him succeed, and hopefully keep that A+ potential. I think we've been giving him enough consistent time this season for him to keep that potential. His performance has been really good in the spotlight games for the most part. He's had good shooting performances, has shown some flashes of being able to be a good passer as well. But his performance in simulation hasn't been excellent. Of course, we'll go over his stats in full once the season ends to see if they improve at all, because they were trending up the last time that we checked in on him. So those are kind of the only 3 core players. I know AC Stevens, our starting center, has been one of our best players since we drafted him 2 seasons ago, and there's a wild shot by Christian Davidson. But I kind of feel like that's more of a product of just someone has to be our second best player or our third best player, right? Not necessarily that he's actually a great player. If I had to say what I think of AC Stevens, I think he's a more kind of low end to solid starter, but great backup potential. And so he's kind of one of those guys that I'm fine if he's starting. I'm not like gonna be super upset if he ends up being the starter long term, but he's definitely somebody that if there's an upgrade available, I'm not gonna hesitate to make it. I think his overall is already close to capped. I don't think it's quite capped yet. Nice score on the drive there by Davidson. And so I think he's somebody who just where his overall sits, he'll not complain about being a backup. That's one of the things you have to worry about in this game, is if somebody's coming off the bench but they're high enough overall that they think they should start, then you start to get morale problems, etc., etc. But I don't think that will be a problem with AC Stevens unless he improves more than I expect him to. But yeah, so that puts somebody that we previewed last episode, like Francis Mullins, in much more in play. If we don't end up getting a chance to maybe take one of the point guards, or if we get a chance to take one of the point guards and Francis Mullins, that'd be even better. But as much as Stevens is one of the best players on this year's roster, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm counting on him being a starter into the future. As we end this first quarter here against the Clippers, 19 all, not a ton of scoring, some not great shot selection at times, and sometimes just open misses not falling for us in this quarter. And you can definitely tell this is, a battle of 2 not great teams. Lowry shot 50%, Andre Stevens shot below 50, had a few turnovers in there as well. And so that leads us to this upcoming class. There was a comment in the last episode that I wanted to talk about, that if we get some lottery luck, like we've had the first 2 off seasons, and we get the first or the second pick, would I be willing to move some of our future assets? Let's say we end up with, I don't know, let's just say we end up with 2 and 7. That's where we're at right now, right? Would I be willing to move 7, some future picks, and maybe some players, and get 1 and 2 to pick both Harvey and Pope in the next class? And it's a very intriguing prospect because Harvey is 6'8" and 230 pounds, and he doesn't need to play point guard, despite the fact that he's a point guard prospect. And so I do think the overall idea of using some of our future assets next offseason to ensure that we get a really good draft class is certainly something that's going to be on the table for us. Because, as I've stated several times, and we had to make the correction earlier this season, we don't have a pick after next season's. So in 2 off seasons from now, we don't have our own pick, which is going to put some pressure on us to start to win. And so I definitely want to come out with at least 2, if not 3 really good players from this next class. All kind of depends on what happens with the lottery luck. If we do end up getting, a top 1 or 2 pick, I'm certainly interested in trading back up. If not to take one of the other point guards, maybe to take Francis Mullins. Maybe to take Kelvin Fletcher, who I think would be a great 2-guard fit next to Lowry as well. And then, I'm not... If we end up maybe getting some bad luck, right? Maybe a couple of teams jump into the top 4 behind us, and this 7 pick that we have drops to 9. We're kind of out of the range of some of the top players in this class. Definitely want to move up. I think there's probably, if I would estimate, because I didn't show you guys everybody that I really like in this class, I got to save some people for our final draft preview. I would estimate that there's 7 or 8 players that I really, really like in this class, and I am very determined to come away with 2 of those players. And they're really all at kind of the point guard, center, and power forward position. I think are the 3 best positions. I think Kelvin Fletcher is kind of the only good 2-guard in this class, and then I don't think there's really a great small forward in this class. And so whether that ends up being, hey, we draft Malachi Pope to play point guard and then Harvey to play shooting guard or small forward, I think that would be awesome. If that's a possibility for us, I will tell you this right now, I will at least try it. I'll see if wherever that 2nd pick lands, plus the future first that we have, maybe a player or 2, if that's good enough to get us that other top 2 pick and we can end up with both, I will certainly try it. I'm not gonna say no to adding both of them. I honestly, before that comment, I hadn't really ever thought of that. So I'm glad that was commented. If we don't end up with a top 2 pick, though, I don't think we'll have enough ammo to trade for both of the top 2 picks. So it's really going to take some lottery luck, though. But even if we don't get it, let's say we don't. Say we end up with like the 4th pick and the 5th pick. I'm still interested in at least trading up for 1. I have to, I feel like, take advantage of the fact that this point guard class is probably the best that we're going to see at any point in this series, and we have to take advantage of it because I think point guard is our weakest spot. We have one guy in Wilson Fisher starting, and then Davidson's playing point guard out of necessity. He's really probably better suited to be a 2-guard. He's playing it out of necessity for our team, so we definitely need point guard. Hudson, I will say, who's been in the G League all year, should get better, and maybe we'll be ready to play some point guard for us next year. But even so, I think we need an improvement on a starter at that spot. I think Hudson could maybe improve enough to be a good backup, which could move Davidson over to the 2. But we definitely need a point guard, and we need a starting caliber point guard. Both Pope and Harvey are going to be just that. Gotta end up with one of those 2, I think, in this class. Now, maybe it's just too much and we can't actually get into the top 2. I do think there are other options. Of course, we saw Barry Carroll out of Florida in that same draft preview. I think he's a starting level point guard prospect as well. I think he's definitely a tier below, you know what I mean? He's not quite as well rounded, but he is a good 2-way player. He does have 6 badges as well. I think that would be a great consolation prize. There's another point guard in this class. There's a couple that are really good, but there's one that I think would be an excellent fit, of course, that we'll talk about in the final draft preview, which will be 2 episodes from now in this series. But there's just a ton of options. That being said, I still think, Pope and Harvey are a tier above the other guys, and it would be worth giving up the assets for them. Other than that, I don't know if there's anybody else in this class that I'd be willing to trade a bunch of assets for maybe like one of our future firsts to trade up, get one of the guys. But definitely just going along with the comment of, am I willing to trade future assets to get a really good offseason this coming offseason, whether that ends up being Harvey and Pope or just something else in the draft? Absolutely, I am. Not only am I willing to do it, I am planning on it. This is the time to create a team that can kind of start to win. We're going to be entering Sidney Lowry's year 3. Going to get even better. He's going to be ready to win, so we got to field at least a competitive team around him. And then talking about some of the other players on the roster and how I view them. We talked about kind of the core of this roster, and then of course, AC Stevens after that. We'll just go maybe player by player. I'll give my quick little spiel on how I feel about them. And of course, if you disagree, if you have different feelings about a player, I'm always willing to get other opinions. Maybe you guys like somebody more than I do. Maybe you guys think I'm looking at somebody with rose-colored glasses and I need to calm down because they're not actually that good. Wilson Fisher. I think he's a good backup point guard. He's a very good defender despite the fact that he's 6'1". He doesn't take stupid shots. He's not a great passer by any means, but he's a willing passer. And I think those are all good qualities for a solid backup point guard. Forced to start this year out of necessity. But, of course, as I just said, getting a new starting point guard is my top priority come next offseason. And I wouldn't mind having Wilson Fisher still in our rotation next year as our backup, though. I think we're kind of set up to have a competition at backup point guard, probably between Wilson Fisher and Sam Hudson. And one of those players is going to be somebody that we might have to move on from and see if we can't recoup a little bit of value back. Because I don't think either player is going to be happy not getting any runtime next season. But I also don't think we're going to have a role for both if I'm able to get a point guard in the class, which I'm pretty much 100% positive I will be able to. Moses Moody, been in our starting lineup this year. He has been somebody that I was very excited to take in the expansion draft. I was a big fan of Moses Moody coming out of the draft, and I really like Moody. I think Moses Moody will fit better with like a successful team, just because I feel like he's a really good kind of 4th or 5th starter where you don't have to ask him to do too much. Of course, he actually stepped up in a major way in our Christmas game in New York. Ended up being the leader. I think that's not something you can really depend on him all that much to do. He's not a very, creative handler or anything, but he's excellent off the catch. If you give him an open look from 3, he's going to take it, and he's really good at them. He doesn't take bad shots. He's a good defender. He can find the open man passing, and I just think that's a really good complementary player. And out of all the kind of guys that we took in the expansion draft, I will say Moses Moody is my favorite. There is a guy that this season in particular has made him a very close second, but Moses Moody, whether he's long-term as a starter, as a backup, you'd have to project more likely to be the backup once Christian Davidson develops a bit. So we get a 3 from AC Stevens, which he missed. Could have predicted that. I just really like him. I think he's a really good, role player. Maybe we could. I'm not going to say we can't upgrade him because he's probably done getting badges and he only has 2. So I'm not going to say I'm opposed to upgrading over him at some point. I just think it's going to be very low on the priority because I feel like he plays well both in our spotlight games and in simulation, which is really all you can ask for. Clean look there for Andre Stevens. Missed it. We got a 9-point lead here, and MPJ just steps out of bounds. Been a much better second quarter here for us than it was in the first. Yeah, I really like Moses Moody, and I think he works better when he's gonna not really be the focus of a lineup, as is technically, I think, our third best player right now. Definitely not the kind of guy you want as your third best player on your entire roster, but if he's kind of the guy who can work mostly off ball, play some good defense, make the good decisions, I trust him in that role. The guy who I was talking about who's coming up in second place is Patrick Baldwin. His shooting has really been a boon for this team. For a team that really does not have a lot of shooters. I think Lowry, Moody, and Baldwin are the only three people above a B for three-pointers on the entire team. So we've desperately needed his shooting, especially because he's the only one in the second lineup that has above the B for their three-point shooting. And he's just been playing really well this year. His per 36 minutes are really high, so he's making the most of his minutes for sure. If he was a little bit better defensively, I might have even substituted him for Moody in the lineup right now. I just think Moody's defense being better is what really keeps him in the lineup over Baldwin. Baldwin's shooting is awesome, and if you can shoot well and you have good size and you don't take bad shots, that's exactly what I'm looking for in kind of my role players. And so Moody and Baldwin, if I had to say, guys that might be sticking around from the expansion draft for the long haul, it's definitely those two. Likely only going to end up being one of them in the long run. We'll probably just draft enough players that we'll only have a spot for one of them. But I really like both of them. Moody is a little bit expensive right now, I will say that. He's on a $20 million contract for the next 2 years. And that would be a problem if we were really paying anybody else, as the Clippers will get that last second bucket to make it 50-43 going into halftime of this game. But I think once this contract expires, he'll probably be asking for a bit less on his next one. If he's still asking for $20 million, that could end up being a problem, because by then Sidney Lowry will be on his second contract by the time Moses Moody's done with his, or at least I think he'll have one more year on his rookie contract. And then, of course, Stevens will be after that. This next draft class, which will likely feature multiple players, will be up after that. So a couple of years from now, we're really starting to pay our players. And you can't really be paying $20 million to a player like Moses Moody once you're paying your stars, So hopefully his asking price goes down quite a lot. And if it does, I'd like to keep him. Same with Baldwin. His contract actually expires this upcoming offseason. We'll have to see how much he's asking for. Again, we can, at least in the next 2 years, pay a pretty decent penny, because all of our guys will be on rookie contracts. But after that, it gets significantly tougher. Runs in with a nice drive there to open up the second half. And I just lost my train of thought completely. Oh, just moving on through the roster now. Shannon Stewart, as our backup center, really not attached to him at all. I feel like he's been playing solid. If he was a little bit better of a shooter, or at least would take them more as well, maybe I'd like him a little bit better. But that was kind of the idea of picking him up, is that our centers shoot some threes on this team, just with the playbook that we have. And he was projected to be like a B- or a B shooter, ended up only being a C 3-point shooter. So that's a little bit disappointing. He also has like a 0 shot 3 tendency, so the only time he's ever actually taken a 3 this season is in our spotlight games. He hasn't taken one in simulation, I don't think. So Definitely somebody I could see us, if we end up, through trades or something, end up with a second round pick. I think trying again at center, getting our third different backup center in 3 years. I'm not opposed to it. Also not opposed to bringing Shannon Stewart back. Again, I don't hate him at all. I just think he is very much the definition of a replacement player. A couple guys that have been on our team for a bit longer in Zaire Williams and Jalen Johnson. Talked a little bit about it the last time that we went over player stats, but they're just not quite having the same caliber years that we've become accustomed to. They're both shooting under 40%, and I think a large portion of that is that they're both pretty bad three-point shooters. Zaire Williams has actually had moments in the first couple of years where he's been able to knock down threes pretty well. He actually had a couple of nice moments in the next game as well, but for the most part this year, Zaire has not shot well, and Jalen Johnson has just not taken to being a backup very well. I think he was our worst starter last time. Of course, got disappointment of the year, and then lost his starting job because we drafted Andre Stevens, of course, and then has just become even worse as a backup. I was hoping, he would, be a really high level backup. He's actually been really good for Atlanta in real life, but of course, all these ratings are from before the season, so anything 2K would have updated is not updating for his player character in this series. And I think both are very, very expendable. I thought Zaire had a chance to be somebody that we kept for the long term. I was never super sure about Johnson. Just there's been too many times where I just feel like Jalen Johnson has had no impact on a game. So I knew I wanted to eventually kind of phase him out of the lineup, find another power forward to be Andre Stevens' backup for the long term. But up until this season, I was actually really hopeful for Zaire because I like what he does. He's got great positional length, something that we have done a pretty good job acquiring. We have a couple of short guys on our roster, but for the most part, we're a pretty long team and pretty athletic team, and Zaire fits that mold very well. He's one of the players that helps us be really long and athletic as a team, but has just struggled both kind of in the spotlight games and in simulation this year. More so in simulation, though. And so those two are players, they're on 2-year deals right now. They'll be expiring this offseason. If one of those two players can help us move up in the draft, those are probably the two players I'm looking at to maybe include in a trade package. But in terms of just kind of all the topics I wanted to take a moment and talk about here, that pretty much concludes it all. I've talked about all the players, talked about the comments. I think there might be a comment or two I wanted to talk about that I have forgotten. But with that being said, let's go ahead. The last 7 minutes left here in the third. Let's go ahead and start commentating on this game as Irvin Edwards gonna get himself to the line with the and one layup. He completes that 3-point play. Just a one possession ball game here. 7 minutes to go in the third. Seen some good stuff from Sidney Lowry in this game, as we so often have here in his second season spotlight games, and he gets the space off the double screen to hit that shot. Brunson up the court, defended by Wilson Fisher, gets the high screen and roll. Well defended by Fisher, bump and run. Passes it out to Michael Porter, back to Brunson. Just getting hounded by Wilson Fisher this possession. Excellent defense from him. Late in the shot clock, Michael Porter Jr. forced to throw it up. No good on that one. In transition, what a find by Fisher. AC Stevens runs the court and gets rewarded. Edwards with the ball, top of the key. Moses Moody defending. Pick and roll from the wing to Brunson. Gets inside and he's blocked by E.C. Stevens. Lowry with it up to Moody. Back to Lowry and the transition bucket. 2 transition baskets in a row for the Sound. 39 points on 17 to 21. Man, I've been so distracted by talking about the team. I didn't realize just how good Lowry's been. My goodness. I knew he's been having a really good game, but didn't know it was that good, especially if you consider that his first 2 shots were both blocked. Since getting blocked twice, he's 17 for 19, excuse me. And another transition basket. This time it's a slam dunk, putting Lowry above 40 points. And just like that, it's a double-digit Nashville lead. It was just a 1-basket game. Seemed like a few seconds ago, but some excellent defense. We're turning it into offense. And we're going on a bit of a run. Zubats, top of the key, goes inside to Brunson. Finishes over Wilson Fisher. As good of a defender as he is, that size does hurt him a bit, even though Brunson's not much bigger. I think they're actually the same height. I think Brunson's just a little bit stronger. Stevens, top of the key, hands off to Moody. He's pulling it. Too strong. Brunson now. Pick and roll once again. Spinning, shooting, but off the mark. Baldwin with the board. He's pushing it the other way. Moody feeds Andre Stevens in the post. The double comes. He's shooting it anyway, and he scores. Just too big for those defenders there. Bogdanovich and Edwards. Porter Jr. defended by Andre Stevens. Pass out to Irvin Edwards. And that's stolen by Moses Moody. Running it in transition. Gets the tough layup. Edwards was there, but Moody finishes right through him. Zubats, top of the key. Kicks it to Jalen Brunson, who gets stripped of the ball. Defense has really come to play here in this stretch in the middle of the third. Really been the catalyst of us building this double-digit lead. Top of the key, Moody. He gets stuffed, and that's the kind of thing I was talking about with him. You know, instead of being the 3rd best player on the team, where in certain lineups he's actually going to be the best or 2nd best. I think he's the 2nd best on the court right now. Yeah. I don't think that's exactly where he's going to shine the most. I think he thrives more on just feeding off other players and hitting the open looks. Edwards, top of the key, running a play for Highland. He spins around, gets into the lane, and dishes it to Porter Jr., who finishes the play. Under 3 minutes now here in the third. High screen and roll. A staple of this offense. We dish to Stevens in the high post. From the free throw line. Trying to drive on Warren. Can't do it. We find an open Baldwin, though, with the shot clock coming down, and he hits that shot, as he so often does. Clippers running a lot through Irvin Edwards right now. Hand off to Bones Highland, who misses that pull-up jumper. Moody. Dribbling it around, ends up dishing it out to Wilson Fisher, who gets a double screen here. Going to the rim with it, pulling up. Not his shot. I know your question might be, what is Wilson Fisher's shot? Wide open layup. That's what we're looking for from Wilson Fisher. as he gets the steal on Bones Highland. Now that is very much so his game. He's excellent at that. In transition, that one's not going to fall for him. Tried to get the steal in the basket, but can't complete the play. But Boyan can from the corner. 78-67 the score. Passing it around to Stevens. Gonna find an open Moody on the cut. Nice play. These cut plays work out for us quite often. Highland in isolation against Wilson Fisher, who's been excellent in this quarter. Defensively, at least. And once again, shutting down this isolation attempt. What a defensive player, man. 6'1", but dang is he good at defense. Clippers end up scoring on the possession regardless. Because Michael Porter Jr. is a big dude. High screen and roll again. Fisher gonna take another shot, and he missed it again. This dude like never shoots. Why is he all of a sudden taking every shot for us? Because he's on a roll defensively. Highland again driving in on Wilson Fisher. This time he was a little bit more successful, but still good defense there, forcing a miss. And that's going to end the third with a 3 from Moody. He hit it. Let's go. We get the extra 3 points to tack on to the lead going into the fourth. What a shot. Let's go. Some nice defense, like I was stating during the action, was definitely the catalyst for that. Wilson Fisher was excellent, as well as some other players, creating turnovers, getting a few transition opportunities, finding some open players until that little Wilson Fisher run. Starting off the fourth, Christian Davidson playing some point for us. Gets a screen from Moody. Finds him on the roll, and Moody with the basket. Nice pass there from Davidson. Highland trying to isolate against Lowry. Lowry's an even better defender than Wilson Fisher, just because he's 6'9" and also has the same defensive attributes as Wilson Fisher. And Lowry just throws a terrible pass. It gets picked off, and the Clippers are going to score quickly on the other end. Highland gets himself a free throw opportunity. Lowry gets the screen and gets to the basket and slams it in. His second dunk. Been a while since he's scored. That last transition. Oh, that's his third dunk. I forgot about that transition dunk as well. Had that awesome dunk early in the game that you got to remember. Hard to forget that one. That was sweet. That's Otto Porter, man. Still kicking it here. A few years down the line with the Clippers. Jalen Johnson lobs it to Lowry, who gets fouled. For a second, I thought that was a Jalen Johnson shot, and I was very confused. Lowry hasn't even used the three-point shot that much to get his 40-plus point game. Or was that free throws that I saw? He was 3 or 4. It's got to be... No, I thought that was threes. Regardless, Sound up 15 now. Porter to Brunson. Back out to Highland for 3. That shot is no good. Good closeout. Lowry on the wing, feeds inside to Jalen Johnson. You got the much smaller Highland. You got to finish this, and he does. 91-74 now the score. Things looking nice for another Sound victory, which with the Clippers at second to last place in the league, we definitely were rooting for a Sound victory today. Davidson, nice. Strong attack to the basket. He's going to earn some free throws. He's not very good at them, though. Definitely want your guards to be better than what Davidson is. His rating is somewhere in the 60s. I think it's low 60s, too. I can't remember exactly. Does go 1 for 2. Highland. Trying to drive on Sidney Lowry. It's just not working. Highland's just not getting by anybody today, unfortunately. We're putting our best defenders on him. But Boyan scores. Lowry, top of the key, gets the AC Stevens screen. Pulls up quickly off of it and hits the shots. This guy just can't miss. He's going to put up a 50 bomb today. Unless he goes to the last 9 minutes scoreless, which I just don't see that happening. Warren, 4-3. Back to 16-point Sound lead. Definitely want to see Lowry get this 50 ball. He's instead going to pass to Stevens, gets the assist. Can't be all scores. You got to do some other stuff on the court too, I guess. Highland trying to drive by Lowry again. Feeds it to Irvin Edwards inside, who gets the layup over Zaire. Davidson with it. Feeds Williams, who gets a double screen. Nice bounce pass to AC Stevens. That was a beautiful pass. And a nice finish on top of it. Highland gonna get pickpocketed here by Sidney Lowry. Finds Davidson. He's putting it up from 3 and did not have a lot of space there. We've opened up a 21-point lead, gotten ourselves over 100 points on the day. Definitely two of the worst teams in the league, but it looks like the Clippers are just even a tier below even us. Brunson and MPJ have not had enough help here today. Is this where we see Lowry get 50? Didn't really do much with that screen. Wants to take it himself in isolation, and he gets picked. Highland gets reached in by Jalen Johnson for some reason. Guess it allows some subs. Didn't take Lowry out good. Basically, I want to see Lowry get a 50 bomb. And we might be done with this game. Nice defense by Andre Stevens. Wilson Fisher, top of the key. Hands off to Lowry. No good. AC Stevens on the board. Would have been the 50-point bomb for Lowry. Gonna have to wait just a little longer. Brunson hands off to Highland. Gets a screen. Gets inside and just not his game lately. Moody in transition, pulling the trigger. Off the mark, Andre Stevens, and one on the offensive rebound. Up to a 25-point lead now, and make that 26. Just an absolute thrashing since the halfway point of the third quarter, man. It was a one-bucket game when we started commentating this game. It's crazy how good our team has turned it on since then. It's probably my commentary that unlocked it. I mean, if we were commentating from the beginning, what would our lead be? 50? Clippers have to keep this close enough that Lowry can get 50 before we put in our scrubs. Now we're just going possessions without even giving Lowry the ball. Here we go. He might get it here top of the key. Nope, we're going inside to Stevens. This is out. Lowry has to put up a tough shot, and he hit it anyway. That's the 50-point performance. Sidney Lowry make it 52 to be exact. His career high is 61? 64? But this is the most he's ever scored in a game that's been recorded for the channel, one of our spotlight games. And that's, like I said, once he got the 50 bomb, it looks like our scrubs are about to enter the game. So I don't think he's going to even go for that. Oh, 51. I thought it was 52. Not even going to attempt the new career high. Jalen Johnson, actually pretty good. Talked about him needing it, not really being impressed with him this season. He had his best game of the year by far. Solid game from Davidson with 9 and 7. And there you go. And now at the end of the episode, simulated one more week to get through the 4 weeks here, and we'd pick up another win. Lowry continues his hot streak, 44 on 14 of 17 from the field. Andre Stevens would score 15 here, but on 18 shots, his cold streak is not going away anytime soon. And then one more win here. Andre Stevens, here we go. Here's the bounce back. 32 points on 20 shots. 27 points and 8 assists for Sidney Lowry. Going against Anthony, who put up 28 and 8. I mean, he is a really good player. I just kind of want to see what he's averaging this year. 19, 11 and a half, 5 with 3 stocks. Shooting kind of low for the center, honestly, but I mean, just a stat sheet stuffer, kind of a box line from him. He's all over the place. 4.5 offensive rebound a game is quite a lot, and he's one of the biggest reasons as we go through. And one more time here, take a look at the standings now at the end. The Pacers are in first place, and he's a large part of that. And Clippers still in second. We're still in 7th, so that last week didn't do much of anything to change the standings. Clippers did not win a single game this week, but neither did the Hawks. They traded away Trae Young at the deadline, and they are committed to tanking, and they were doing a mighty fine job of it here. Not a good team. So there you have it. Next episode, we will be finishing off season 3, going through final stats and awards as well. I'm excited for that episode. Hope you are too. And until that episode, sound up.